What if the most honest thing a person ever did in their entire life was nothing at all? No words, no grand gesture, no letter left on the pillow, just a stool in the back corner. Every single day. There's a story, and most folks who know it won't tell it because it embarrasses them to feel that much in a place built for whiskey and forgetting. But I'm going to tell it to you. Every last inch of it. Because by the time we're done, I think you'll understand something about the American West that no history book has ever quite managed to put into words. This is the story of Caleb Doss and Rosalie Vane, and the back corner of the Dustfall Saloon in Harlow Creek, Texas. 1883. And here's what I want you to hold on to before we go any further. Nobody in this story was a hero. Nobody was a villain. They were just two people in a world that moved too fast and asked too much. And somewhere in all that dust and noise, they found each other. Slowly. Terribly slowly. But here's the thing about slow. Sometimes slow is the only thing that lasts. The town of Harlow Creek sat in the Panhandle like something God had dropped and didn't bother picking up. Population was somewhere between 400 and however many were still breathing. It had a church, a jail, a general store, a livery stable, and the Dustfall Saloon. And if you were being honest, the saloon saw more prayer than the church did most Sundays. The Panhandle in 1883 was a particular kind of hard. The cattle trail days were winding down. The railroad had punched through just far enough to make some men rich and most men obsolete. Cowboys who'd spent their 20s riding drives up from Texas were now finding themselves standing outside employment offices in towns that barely had names, hat in hand, dignity somewhere down the road in the dust. That was the world Caleb Doss walked into on a Tuesday morning in March, when the ground was still cold and the sky was that flat, gray-white that means winter isn't done fighting yet. He was 31 years old. He had $47, a horse named Comet that had seen better decades, a saddle roll with 2 shirts, and a Bible he'd never opened, and a reputation for being good with cattle and quiet around people. He'd come from the Cimarron River country, which itself had come from nowhere, and before that from Tennessee, though he'd left there at 17 and hadn't looked back hard enough to remember much. He wasn't tall. He wasn't particularly handsome. He had the kind of face that a painter might call honest, angular, sun-browned, with eyes the color of creek water in autumn, something between green and gray that changed depending on the light. His hands were the hands of a working man, thick at the knuckle, scarred at the palm, permanently edged with the kind of grime that doesn't fully wash out. He walked into the Dustfall Saloon at 11 in the morning because the hotel wanted $3 a night and he had math to do, and because the sign outside said they served coffee, and because he was cold. The Dustfall was not a beautiful establishment. It was long and low, built from rough-cut pine that had warped slightly in the Panhandle heat and settled into itself the way old men settle into chairs. There were 8 tables, a bar that ran the length of the left wall, a staircase at the back that led to rooms nobody asked too many questions about. And in the far right corner, almost as an afterthought, almost as if the builder had some wood left over and felt guilty about it, a small raised platform where a piano sat like a forgotten argument. The back corner, opposite the piano, had a single stool against the wall and a small ledge nailed up for drinks. No table. Just that stool, tucked away from the noise, facing forward so you could see the whole room without anyone thinking too hard about you. Caleb Doss sat on that stool at 11:03 on a Tuesday morning in March of 1883, and he never really left. Now, here's where you might be expecting something to happen immediately. A dramatic entrance, a gunshot, a woman sweeping down those stairs in a red dress, and the whole room going quiet. But that's not what happened. What happened was, he ordered coffee. A woman brought it. She put it on the ledge without looking at him, went back behind the bar, and went on with her morning. That woman was Rosalie Vane. Rosalie was 28 years old. She was not the madam of the Dustfall, not a dancer, not a card dealer, and she would have been sharp about correcting you on this, a saloon girl. In any of the ways that phrase was used to mean other things. She was the day manager. She had been working at the Dustfall for 4 years, ever since her husband, a rancher named Douglas Vane, had been thrown from a horse and broken his neck in the spring of 1879. Douglas Vane had been a decent man and a poor businessman, and what he left behind was a small piece of land with a mortgage that Rosalie couldn't service alone, 2 horses, a dog named Frank, and the particular loneliness of a widow in a frontier town who was young enough that everyone assumed she'd remarry quickly, and stubborn enough that she refused to let that assumption be anyone else's plan for her life. She'd taken the job at the Dustfall because Hector Pell, who owned the place, had offered her fair wages and the freedom to run the day shift without interference. She was good at it. She could track accounts, settle disputes without shouting, spot a man who was about to get mean before he knew it himself, and pour a glass of whiskey with the kind of efficiency that made customers feel served without feeling dismissed. She was not what you'd call beautiful in the conventional way the magazines talked about beauty back east. She was something better than that. She had dark hair she kept pinned up, but that fell in small rebellions at her temples. Brown eyes that looked at things directly, the kind of direct that made some men uncomfortable and other men feel seen for the first time. A mouth that was generous with practical information and sparing with sentiment. Though when she smiled, actually smiled, not the customer smile, it changed the temperature in a room. She was not looking for anything, or so she told herself. The first week, Caleb Doss came in every morning at approximately the same time, ordered coffee, sat on his stool, and left around midday. He found day work at the McCready Ranch 3 miles out, fixing fence lines, helping with the early spring roundup prep, the kind of work that doesn't require a conversation, but does require a body. He paid for his coffee every day with exact change, never asked for anything he hadn't already established he wanted, and spoke perhaps 30 words over the course of 7 days. Rosalie noticed this. She noticed most things. It was her job to notice things. She filed it away in the category of quiet regular and didn't think about it after hours. The second week, it rained for 5 straight days. The kind of flat, miserable panhandle rain that comes sideways and makes the whole world smell like wet dog and regret. Caleb Doss came in on the first day of rain, sat on his stool, ordered his coffee, and then, because there was nothing else to do and the McCready job had gone muddy, stayed through the afternoon. He didn't talk. He watched the room. But here's the thing about watching rooms. There are people who watch rooms because they're dangerous, and there are people who watch rooms because they find humanity interesting. Rosalie Vane, who had learned to read the difference over 4 years behind a bar, put Caleb Doss in the second category around day 3. He watched the poker game near the window, not with the hunger of a man calculating odds, but with the attention of someone who finds other people's choices genuinely worth observing. He watched the piano player, an old Creole man named Bertrand, who played Thursday through Sunday, with something close to reverence. He watched Rosalie too. Not the way men in saloons usually watched women. There was nothing in it that required her guard to go up. It was the same quality of attention he gave everything else in the room. Careful, patient, curious, like he was reading something and didn't want to miss a word. She caught him at it on a Wednesday afternoon, held his gaze for 1 second, just long enough to signal that she'd noticed, and then looked away first. He dropped his eyes immediately and went back to his coffee. She went back to her accounts. Neither of them said anything, And somehow, that exchange, that nothing, felt like the beginning of something she didn't have a name for yet. Now, I want to stop here for a second and ask you something. And I genuinely want you to think about this. Have you ever been seen? Not looked at. Seen. The way some people can look at you, and you can feel it somewhere behind your sternum, like a key turning in a lock you forgot was there. Drop your answer in the comments, because I think this is the part of the story that most people feel personally. And if you felt it, you already understand exactly what was happening in that back corner of the Dustfall Saloon. And if you haven't felt it yet, stay with us, because that's actually part of what this story is about. The first time they actually spoke, beyond the transactional exchange of coffee, and here you are, was in the third week of March, a Saturday. The saloon was louder than usual. 3 cowboys from a ranch up north had come in with the specific intention of getting as loud as the night allowed, and they were doing a respectable job of it. One of them, a large man with a red beard and the confidence of someone who had never been wrong about anything important, decided that the piano needed improvement and began playing it himself, badly, while singing a song that had words Rosalie did not want in her establishment on a Saturday afternoon when there were families on the street outside. She came out from behind the bar. In 4 years, she had learned that confrontation is mostly theater. If you perform it correctly, you don't need to escalate. She walked to the piano with the unhurried certainty of a person who owns every room they walk into, and she said, quietly, so only the red-bearded man could hear, something that caused him to stand up immediately, apologize, and go back to his table. Nobody at the other tables quite knew what had happened. It looked almost like nothing. Caleb Doss saw all of it. When she walked past the back corner on her way to the bar, she glanced over. He gave her a single nod. Not congratulatory, not performative. Just, I saw that. It was good. She paused. You're McCready's fence man, she said. Was, he said. Job's done. What are you doing next? He thought about it honestly, which was already unusual. Most men, asked that question, would have given her the version of an answer that made them sound purposeful. Caleb Doss looked briefly at the middle distance and said, Don't know yet. She nodded slowly, the way people nod when the honesty of an answer surprises them, but they don't want to show it too much. Coffee or something stronger? She asked. Coffee's fine, he said. She brought it herself. That was new. Through April, Caleb Doss found work where he could. 2 weeks helping a surveyor map land northeast of town. A week driving a supply wagon to a smaller settlement 40 miles out. A few days here and there, moving lumber at the feed mill. He was always back by mid-morning. The stool in the back corner of the Dustfall became the fixed point around which the rest of his life rotated. The town of Harlow Creek began to incorporate him the way small towns do, gradually, without announcement. He became the quiet one in the back at the Dustfall. The livery stable man, Adolphus Chen, knew his horse's feed preferences. The woman at the general store, Mrs. Pfeiffer, started keeping a tin of the tobacco he smoked aside for him without being asked. Even the sheriff, a compact and observant man named Ira Goddard, had nodded to him twice, which in Harlow Creek was the equivalent of a formal introduction. But the most important thing that happened through April was this. Rosalie Vane began to save him the stool. It was small. If you asked her, she would have said she wasn't doing anything of the sort. She would have pointed out that nobody ever really sat in that particular corner anyway, and therefore it hardly required saving. But the fact remained that on the 3 occasions when someone else moved toward that corner, she found reasons to redirect them. A table nearby with better light. A position at the bar with a view of the card game. A stool up front where the breeze came in, nice through the window in the afternoon. The back corner stayed empty until Caleb arrived. Then it was his. He never commented on it, but he noticed. And somehow, his noticing it without saying it was the most eloquent response he could have given. By the end of April, they were having conversations that lasted long enough to require refills. Nothing remarkable, you understand. The price of cattle, the likelihood of more rain. A story she'd heard about a man in Amarillo who'd made a fortune selling fence wire and immediately lost it playing Pharaoh. A question he had about a painting on the wall, a badly rendered landscape of somewhere green that looked nothing like Texas, and where it came from. Hector's wife painted it, Rosalie said, before she passed. He hung it because she'd be offended if he didn't, and he kept it because now it's the only thing she left in the building. Caleb looked at the painting for a long moment. That's a good reason to keep something, he said. Small things. But here's the thing about small things in a world as large and indifferent as the Panhandle in 1883. They accumulate. They build up like sediment on a riverbed, layer by layer, until the river itself starts running a little differently than it did before. And neither the river nor anyone watching it can point to the exact moment the change began. Now, if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, I want you to think about something. This story has barely started. We've got the summer of 1883 ahead of us. We've got a man who's about to make a decision that costs him everything. We've got a woman who's about to be tested in a way that nobody who loved ease would survive. And we've got a back corner of a saloon that's going to become the most important piece of real estate in this part of Texas. Hit that subscribe button right now, because you do not want to be the person who walks in at the third act without knowing what came before. May arrived with heat that had memory of the coming summer in it, warm enough to notice, not yet hot enough to dread. And with the warmer weather came the man who would change everything. His name was Wallace Cord. Wallace Cord was 45 years old, and he had the particular energy of a man who had been successful enough times to believe that success was his natural state and failure a temporary inconvenience. He'd made money in land speculation, lost some in railroad bonds, made it back in cattle brokering, and was currently in the process of acquiring land in the Panhandle at prices he considered bargains, and that the local ranchers considered highway robbery, conducted in the language of business. He was charming in the way that expensive things are charming, polished, effortless, pleasant to be near in small doses. He wore a suit, not a Sunday suit, not an uncomfortable suit, a real suit, well-made and well-fitted, that said money without shouting it. He came into the Dustfall on a Thursday evening in the second week of May, surveyed the room with the casual authority of a man used to surveying things, and made his way to the bar. Rosalie was there. Within 20 minutes, Wallace Cord had established that he found Rosalie Vane remarkable. He did it with the practiced grace of a man who had found several women remarkable in his life and knew exactly how to communicate it without being crude. He was respectful, interested. He asked her questions and actually waited for the answers. From the back corner, Caleb Doss watched. His coffee had gone cold. He didn't notice. He watched Rosalie's face while she talked to Wallace Cord, looking for something. For what? He couldn't quite have said, and he found it maybe in the slight extra alertness in her expression, the way she laughed at something Cord said, not the customer laugh, something realer than that. Or maybe not. He was watching from too far away, in too dim a light, to be sure of anything. What he was sure of was that he didn't like any of this particularly, and he was even surer that he had no right to that feeling. He paid for his coffee and left. The second Friday of May, Caleb Doss arrived at the Dustfall and did something he hadn't done before. Instead of going directly to the back corner, he stopped at the bar. Rosalie was doing inventory. She looked up. "Morning," she said. "Morning," he said. And then, and you could see the effort it cost him, the way you can always see it in people who aren't practiced at want. That man who came in Thursday. Cord. What about him? He coming back? A pause. She looked at him with the full quality of those direct brown eyes. "He said he might," she said. "He's in town for land business." Caleb nodded, set his exact change on the bar for his coffee. "Okay," he said, and went to the back corner. Rosalie watched him go, stood with the inventory ledger in one hand, and the sensation that something important had just happened that she couldn't fully read. She brought the coffee herself. She stood next to the ledge for a moment longer than was strictly necessary. "He asked if I'd have supper with him," she said. Caleb looked at his coffee. "He's got a right to ask," he said. "I didn't say he didn't." "What did you tell him?" Another pause, longer this time. "I told him I'd think about it." Caleb nodded once, slow. Looked up at her then, just briefly, just enough, and said, "You should go. If you want to go." It was, objectively, the most useless piece of advice a man had ever given a woman. She knew that. He almost certainly knew that. But it wasn't really advice. It was the closest he could get to saying something else entirely in a language he'd never been taught. She understood that too. She went back to the bar. They didn't speak again that day. But that evening, she told Wallace Cord she wasn't available for supper. She didn't examine why she'd done it very carefully. She was a practical woman, and practical women, when they start examining certain things too closely, sometimes have to act on what they find. And acting on what she suspected she'd find felt like a risk she wasn't prepared for. Not yet. So she stayed practical. She ran her accounts. She managed her saloon. She saved his stool every morning. And every morning, he came.
Good morning.
June arrived fast and hot, the way Texas Junes do, like the month itself is in a hurry. The Dustfall gained a ceiling fan that Hector Pell had ordered from somewhere back east, and that made a sound like a playing card in a bicycle wheel, but moved air, which was enough. The cowhands from the surrounding ranches came in more frequently as the cattle work intensified, and the evenings got long and restless. And Caleb Doss started talking to Bertrand. Bertrand Alcide was 63 years old, from a family that had been in Louisiana since before Louisiana was a state, and he'd come to the Panhandle by a series of decisions and circumstances that he described vaguely as the long way around. He played piano the way some people pray, not performing, but communing with something. Thursday through Sunday evenings, the Dustfall was a different room when Bertrand was at the keys. He and Caleb started talking after a Thursday night when the saloon had emptied early, and Bertrand was still playing, just playing, for himself, something slow and complicated. And Caleb was still in the back corner, the last customer, and Bertrand noticed and played something specifically for him without being asked. "You got somebody," Bertrand said afterward, not asking exactly. Caleb looked at him. "Not mine to have," he said. Bertrand nodded thoughtfully, played a few more bars of something. "Folks that say it ain't theirs to have," Bertrand said, usually saying it 'cause they don't know what to do if they asked for it and got it. Caleb was quiet for a while. "Could be," he said. Bertrand played the slow thing again, all the way to the end this time. "Fear of the good is a particular kind of sadness," the old man said. "Seen it kill more people than the bad ever did." He closed the piano lid, stood up with the careful movement of a man whose knees have opinions. "Same stool tomorrow," he said to Caleb, and walked out. Caleb sat alone in the empty saloon for a while. The ceiling fan went around and around. Summer deepened. The Panhandle turned the particular bronze and amber of a season, trying to hold itself together under the weight of the sun. Wallace Cord came back to Harlow Creek 3 more times in June. His land dealings were proving complicated, which meant extended stays. And he continued his courtship of Rosalie Vane with the patient confidence of a man who had learned that most things worth having required more than one attempt. He was not wrong about that. as a general principle. He was wrong about this particular situation, though he didn't know it yet. Rosalie went to supper with him once, at the hotel, on a Wednesday when the Dustfall was quiet and her shift ended early. It was a pleasant evening. Wallace Cord was genuinely good company, well-traveled, well-read, with opinions about things that weren't just economic self-interest. He made her laugh 3 times with stories about land surveyors he'd known who had mapped the wrong things entirely. He talked about his life without bitterness, which was unusual in men his age. He asked about hers with real attention. When he walked her back to the Dustfall afterward and asked if he might call on her again, she said that she appreciated the evening and wasn't sure yet, and meant both parts of it equally. She went inside. Hector Pell's wife's bad painting was barely visible in the dim light of the empty saloon. The chairs were up on the tables. The stool in the back corner was empty. She stood in the middle of the room for a minute. She was honest enough with herself, alone in that empty saloon, to name what she was doing. She was looking for him. Not Wallace Cord, who was charming and solid and interested, and all the things a sensible widow ought to want, but a quiet man who'd been sitting in her back corner for 4 months now, who spoke 30 words, where others used 100, who had looked at her once with those creek water eyes in a way that had rearranged something she couldn't rearrange back.
Well, I suppose that's just how
"Rosalie," she said aloud to herself in the empty room, "you are being an absolute fool." The ceiling fan agreed, going around and around. She went home. The 4th of July in Harlow Creek was an event. The town organized a celebration in the main street, a parade of sorts, though the word parade is doing some work, with speeches from the mayor, a shooting competition, a pie table, and a dance in the evening held in the street outside the Dustfall, which contributed whiskey punch and opened its front to the night. The whole town came, and for one evening, Harlow Creek was not a hard place, but a human one. People dancing badly and laughing about it. Children chasing each other between adult legs. Old men telling the same. 3 stories with the conviction of someone who believes they've improved with repetition. Rosalie Vane was at the Dustfall working, but working meant watching, and watching meant seeing Caleb Doss standing at the edge of the dancing with the careful stillness of a man who has decided not to participate, but can't quite make himself leave either. She came outside on her break, stood beside him. They watched the dancing for a while without talking. "You don't dance?" she asked. "Not in public," he said. She looked at him. "What does that mean?" "Means I do it badly enough that I'd rather be honest about it than let the town watch." She laughed. The real one, not the customer version. It surprised her every time she did it around him. "My husband couldn't dance either," she said. And then, before the words could develop the wrong weight, he used to say the good Lord gave him other qualities to make up for it. Did he? He did. A pause. He was a good man, just not lucky. Caleb was quiet. Then, "I'm sorry for it." She turned to look at him. He was still watching the dancers, that same patient, curious attention he gave everything. But when he said he was sorry, it sounded like something solid, like a thing he meant all the way through. "It was a long time ago," she said. And then, which she hadn't expected to say, "Or it feels like it. I never know which." He turned to her then, not the glance, the full turn, the full look. "4 years," he said. "You've been running this place 4 years. You counted?" "I listen." She held his gaze this time, longer than she'd held it before. "Caleb," she said. The first time she'd used his name, she realized. It felt like stepping through a door. "Ma'am," he said. "Don't," she said. "Don't do that." He almost smiled. Not quite. "Rosalie." The dancing went on around them, badly and joyfully. The fiddle player missed a note and recovered. "I should go back in," she said. She didn't move. "Probably," he said. He didn't move either. They stood there for another moment that neither of them would have been able to measure, because time does different things in moments like that. It stretches. It compresses. It does something between the two that has no name. Then someone called for Rosalie from inside, and she went. Caleb stayed at the edge of the dancing for another hour. He didn't dance. He didn't need to. He was already somewhere else entirely. In July, Wallace Cord made his final trip to Harlow Creek. His land dealings had concluded, less profitably than he'd hoped, more profitably than he deserved, and he had one more evening in town before heading east. He came to the Dustfall in the afternoon. Caleb Doss was in the back corner. Wallace Cord was a perceptive man. It was part of why he'd been successful. He noticed the stool. He noticed the way Rosalie's posture changed slightly when she looked that direction. He noticed, in the quiet way that perceptive men notice things that cost them something, what was actually happening. He sat at the bar for an hour. He was pleasant. He was himself. He didn't make a scene, because he wasn't that kind of man. Before he left, he said to Rosalie, "If things change, I hope you'll write." She said, "Thank you, Wallace. I hope you do well." He shook her hand, tipped his hat, left. The door swung shut behind him. Rosalie went back to the bar, didn't look at the back corner for a few minutes. Then she did. Caleb was watching her, not pretending not to be. He didn't look away when she caught him. She nodded, slow, single, the way he nodded. He nodded back. And that was the most complete conversation either of them had managed in 5 months of trying. August was hot in the way that August in the Panhandle means it, which is to say, the kind of heat that makes you reconsider your choices, including being alive. The town slowed. People moved through the afternoons like they were moving through warm water. Even the arguments in the saloon were languid. It was in this slow August that Caleb Doss finally did what he should have done in March. He came in on a Thursday morning. Rosalie was doing the books at the bar. She heard him come in. She knew his step by now, which she also chose not to examine, and looked up. He didn't go to the stool. He came to the bar. He stood on the customer side and put both hands on the wood and looked at her in a way that was, somehow, simultaneously the most ordinary and the most frightening thing she'd seen in a long time. "I want to ask you something," he said. "All right," she said. "And I want to ask it once. And if the answer is no, I'll still come in the morning, and I'll still sit in the corner, and nothing changes between us. I won't make it strange. I give you my word on that." She put the pencil down. "Ask it," she said. He took a breath that was barely visible. "Would you walk with me Sunday? In the evening. There's a creek about a mile east of here. There are cottonwoods. It's cooler than town. And I would like to show it to you if you'd like to see it. A creek, about a mile east. Cottonwoods. The most modest invitation in the history of the American West." She looked at this man, this quiet, careful, patient man who had sat in her back corner for 5 months without asking for more than coffee and the privilege of being present. And she felt something loosen in her chest, something that had been held tight for a long time, maybe since that spring of 1879, maybe longer than that, like a knot that had been waiting for the right hands. "Sunday," she said. "Evening," he confirmed. "I'll be at the Dustfall at 6, she said. He nodded. His whole body settled slightly, the way people settle when they've been holding something and finally set it down. 6, he said. He paid for his coffee, which she hadn't even poured yet, and went to the back corner. She stood at the bar with the coin in her hand for a moment. Then she smiled, the real one. Then she poured his coffee and brought it over. He looked up when she set it down.
You're welcome.
"Thank you," he said. And it was not about the coffee. "You're welcome," she said, and neither was that. "Now I need to tell you what happened at that creek on Sunday evening. And I need to tell you slowly, because the people who rush through this part miss what it's actually about." The cottonwoods east of Harlow Creek grew along a low creek bed that carried water in spring and went mostly dry by August, but kept enough in the deep pools to stay alive. They were tall trees, 60, 70 feet, with that particular trembling in their leaves that cottonwoods have, like they're always slightly startled. In the late afternoon, when the sun was going west, the light came through them at an angle that made the dry creek bed look golden. Caleb was there before 6. He'd brought nothing. No flowers, no food, no gesture that could be misread. He was just there, in the light, waiting. Rosalie came at 6, exactly. She was wearing her own clothes, not her working clothes. A dress of faded blue cotton that she'd had for years, and worn to church, and worn to her husband's funeral, and worn on the 2 or 3 Sunday afternoons, in 4 years, when she'd remembered that she was also allowed to have them. Her hair was down, not loose, but not pinned the way she wore it working, just gathered simply, with small pieces escaping at the sides, the way they always did.
I came as quickly as I could.
Caleb looked at her, the way he looked at things he found worth looking at,
Me neither.
without pretense, without performance,
It's different.
with his whole attention. "You came," he said. "I said I would,"
I know.
she said.
We'll ride out at dawn.
They walked along the creek bed in the cottonwood light. The conversation moved the way their conversations always did, slowly at first, then steadily, like a fire getting established. He told her about Tennessee, which he almost never talked about. She told him about where she'd come from before Douglas, Vane, a small town in Missouri that was green in a way the Panhandle never was, and that she missed sometimes, the way you miss the person you were before you became someone else. He told her about the drives, not the romantic version, the real version. Cold nights and hot days, and the tedium that underpinned the occasional drama. The way the land looks after you've been riding through it for weeks. How it stops being scenery and starts being something else. Something you can't explain to someone who hasn't been through it. How when a drive ended, the hardest part wasn't the saddle sores or the bad food. The hardest part was the sudden absence of purpose. She listened to everything. She asked questions, good questions, the kind that come from real attention, not from filling silence. He told her, at one point, about a night on the Chisholm Trail, 1878, when a lightning storm had come through and set the herd running, and he'd ridden for 3 hours in the dark, keeping 40 head from scattering to the 4 directions. And in the middle of it, in the full chaos of it, in the rain and the noise and the absolute dark, he'd had the sudden, clear, almost calm thought, I am exactly where I should be. Not that it was pleasant, not that it was safe, just that it was right. He hadn't had that feeling since, until. He didn't say the until, but she heard it. They sat down by one of the deep pools as the sun went lower. The cottonwood leaves caught the last of the light and held it briefly, green gold, before letting it go. Caleb, she said. Yeah. Why did you stay? In Harlow Creek. You could have found work anywhere along the Panhandle. The question sat between them. He looked at the water in the pool. I think you know why, he said. I want to hear you say it. He looked at her then. Level. No performance. Because of you, he said. Because I walked in that first morning, and you brought coffee without looking at me. And something about that, the specific way you didn't look at me, made me want to know every room you walked into for the rest of my life. Silence. The creek breathed. That's the strangest reason I've ever heard, she said. I know it. It's also the truest thing anyone said to me in a long time. He took her hand then, carefully, like he was picking up something that could break. She let him. They sat like that until the light was gone, and the first stars were showing, and the cottonwoods were just shapes against the purple sky.
I could stay here with you forever.
She didn't pull her hand away. He didn't say anything else that required words. Sometimes the thing you've been building toward doesn't announce itself. It arrives quietly in a dry creek bed in August, and it feels less like a beginning than like something that was always there, waiting for you to look in the right direction. Now, I want to ask you something before we get to what comes next, because what comes next is not simple, and I want you to be ready for it. Have you ever been in a situation where the right thing and the easy thing were pointing in completely different directions, where you knew what you should do, but doing it would cost you something you weren't sure you could afford? Tell me in the comments, because Caleb Doss is about to stand at exactly that crossroads, and how you feel about what he chooses will tell you something true about yourself. September brought a problem. The problem's name was Hector Pell, who was not a villain, understand this clearly, but who was a businessman with a businessman's particular variety of short-sightedness. Hector Pell had an offer. A man from Denver named August Stroud had approached him about buying the Dustfall. Stroud was expanding a chain of establishments throughout the Southwest. Same basic formula, higher volume, more of everything. More gambling, more drink, more entertainment of the kind that the local church would have opinions about. The offer was good. Better than good, actually. Enough to let Hector retire to somewhere green and never think about warp-planked pine walls again. There was one condition. Stroud wanted the change of management immediate. He had his own people. The current staff, including Rosalie, would be transitioned out within 30 days of closing. Hector Pell came to Rosalie on a Tuesday in September and told her this like a man who had already made the decision and was telling her as a courtesy. He appreciated her 4 years. He would give her 2 months' wages as severance. He was sorry about the timing. She heard him through. She said nothing she didn't mean. She thanked him for the 4 years and walked to the back of the saloon. Caleb was in the corner. He knew immediately. He saw it in the way she moved, and he knew her movement the way you know the weather after watching the same sky long enough. She told him, flat, factual, practical. He listened. "What will you do?" he asked. "I don't know yet," she said. "I have the land still. Douglas's land. I've been paying the mortgage down. Another year, maybe 2, it'd be free and clear." She paused. "I can't work it alone." He was very still. "Rosalie," he said. Very quiet. "Don't," she said. Not harsh. Careful. Don't say something because I'm in trouble. Don't offer me something because the timing makes it look like the right move. He was quiet for a moment. "I'm not going to," he said. "I was going to ask you something I was going to ask you in 2 weeks anyway. The timing's bad luck, but the question's the same." She looked at him. "I'm not a man with much," he said. "I have a horse and a saddle, and what I've saved since March, which is not nothing, but is not enough to impress anyone. I am not Wallace Cord. I don't have a suit." A pause. "What I have is this. I will be somewhere you can find me. Every day you want me to be there, I'll be there. And every day you don't, I won't bother you. And I am." He stopped, started again. "I'm asking if you would consider me, seriously, as a person who intends to stay." The saloon was quiet around them. Afternoon light through the dusty windows. The ceiling fan making its perpetual slow argument. Rosalie looked at this man who had sat in her back corner for 6 months, who had learned the angle of the light that hit the bar at noon, who knew Bertrand's music by heart without ever knowing he'd been memorizing it, who had held her hand at a dry creek bed under cottonwood trees and known that was enough for that evening. She said, "You're going to have to learn to work land again." He blinked. "I grew up working land," he said. "Then we'll get on fine," she said. He didn't say anything for a moment. He seemed to be checking internally whether the thing he thought had just happened had actually happened. "That's a yes," he said. "Not a question." Making sure. "That's a yes," she said. He nodded, long and slow, like he was taking a census of his whole life and finally finding the number he was looking for. "Okay," he said. She laughed, the real one, for the third or fourth time, and each time it hit him the same way. "Okay," she agreed. What happened after wasn't magic. I want to be clear about that. What happened after was two people in their late 20s and early 30s building something on Douglas Vane's land outside Harlow Creek in the honest light of the Texas Panhandle. It was hard. The land needed work. The house needed work. The first winter was cold and the second spring was dry. There were arguments, not the theatrical kind, but the practical kind that come from two strong-willed people trying to fit their habits into the same space. Rosalie missed the saloon more than she'd expected. Not the work exactly, but the sense of a room that she understood, that she ran, where she knew every corner and every regular, and what every pause in the conversation meant. Caleb was not good at asking for help. It was his most consistent flaw. He would work something until it defeated him before it occurred to him to say out loud that he could use another pair of hands. And Rosalie, who was very good at asking for help and deeply impatient with people who weren't, had to teach him this more than once. But here is what was also true. When the second spring came dry, and the creek bed stayed dry, and they stood looking at the brown grass together and didn't say anything because there was nothing useful to say, he took her hand, same way he'd taken it the first time, carefully, like something that could break. And she held it the same way she'd held it then, completely, without reservation. And that was enough. Not for the grass. The grass required rain, and rain required patience, and patience is not enough for grass. But for them, it was enough. The Dustfall Saloon became something else under August Stroud's management. Bigger, louder. The painting of Hector's wife came down in the first week. Bertrand stopped playing there by the end of the year. But Bertrand found his way out to the Vane property for Sunday dinners through the following 2 years. And sometimes he played the old piano in the parlor, a battered, improbable instrument that had come with the house and that Rosalie had refused to remove because she liked having music in the building. And the sound of it went out through the open windows into the evening and was heard for a quarter mile in all directions. Caleb would sit on the porch those evenings with his coffee. Still coffee. Still exact change in his habits, even when there was no bar to pay, and listen to Bertrand play and watch the last of the light go off the land. He had found the feeling again, the one from the lightning storm on the Chisholm Trail, the one he hadn't felt since. He was exactly where he should be, not because it was easy, not because it was safe, because it was right. There are things the history books don't tell you about the American West. They tell you about the cattle drives, and the gunfighters, and the railroad, and the gold rushes. They tell you about the land. They tell you about the violence. And there was violence. There was plenty of it. And it was real, and it mattered. But what the books mostly skip is this. The West was full of quiet things. Full of people who found each other in the ordinary geography of ordinary days and held on. Not because they were heroes, but because holding on was the only honest response to having found something worth holding. Caleb Doss sat on the same stool in the back corner every day for 6 months. Rosalie Vane never once pretended not to see him. In the end, that was the whole story. And it's enough. This video is an artistic reconstruction developed using artificial intelligence. The characters, events, and dialogue presented here are fictional and created for the purpose of storytelling and entertainment. For historical information about the American West, please consult academic sources and official historical archives.